Hello, welcome back. On this episode we're going to look at how we're going to take our product design and turn it into a physical template that we can then use to cut our materials. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, go and check it out here. If you have watched episode 1 already, then you'll know what this is. This is our panel map. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our panel map and turn it into a physical template that we can then use to cut our material. I'm going to show you how I cut out the template as well as how I cut out the materials. Let's get down to it. The stuff that I use to make the actual template is this. It's photography background paper. It's very thick paper, almost card-like, so it holds its shape really well. I'm very lucky, I'm actually a photographer by trade, so I have access to a lot of these offcuts. But if you know of a photographic studio that might be local to you, I'm sure if you went there and asked for some scraps, they'd be happy to give you some. If you don't have access to photo paper, then card or other thick paper will work. It's just I use this because I can get it for free. I've also seen some people use plastics to make templates out of, but I've had no issue with the paper. I find it quite easy. You can mark stuff onto the paper, which is a good help, and it's easy to cut. I'm going to show you how you cut it so you can get perfect right angles on your template. So the first thing you'll need is a cutting mat. Make sure that your cutting mat has these markings on them. This is how you get your template to a perfect right angle. The next thing you'll need is a pair of scissors. I'm sure everyone already has a pair of scissors. These are especially made for cutting fabric, but I use them for everything. And the next thing you need is a scalpel. I use these Swan Morton scalpels. They're not surgical grade. I like these angled blades as opposed to the curved blades that you can get. The next thing you need is a ruler. Now you will need a big ruler. This is just a 1 meter ruler. Again, you can get this from any kind of hobby or DIY shop. You will also need a pencil to mark your template. And finally, you'll need your background paper or whatever you're going to make your template out of. So when we start to think about the template for the bag or whatever product that you're making, what you want to do is look here in your panel key and it will have every single piece of fabric that you need to cut out to make the bag. These are what we're going to be turning into templates today. So I'm just going to show you one panel as a template. It's very straightforward. It's a rectangle, 44 centimeters by 40 centimeters. So the first step is you want to cut a very rough shape of the panel that you want to make, and then you're going to refine it using the mat. When you start refining, what you want to do is square off one edge. To get that one edge square, that's when you use these lines. You want to line up your ruler. You can see over here maybe. I've got a number 5 here. I line it up with the 5 on the bottom and the 5 on the top. Then you take your scalpel and you cut down. Okay, now that I've squared off this edge here, I'm going to go ahead and square off the top edge, and that will give us a perfect right angle that we can start to work from. So again, find a line. I'm going to go to 41, so 41 on this side and 41 on that side, and then you take your scalpel and you cut to the edge of the ruler. It's quite important to have a very good quality ruler. These metal square edge ones work really well with these scalpels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim it to the right width. So because I want this to be 40 centimeters this way, and the top edge here that is a straight line, straight right angle here, and because this top edge where the right angle we've already done is on the line 41, I want to come down to the 1 centimeter mark at the bottom and trim that edge. So that distance here will be 40 centimeters. And once you've done that, you've only got one last edge to do, and we want this piece to be 44 centimeters across. On this edge here, I'm on number 5, which means I will need to cut to number 49 on here to get this distance to measure 44 centimeters. So square it up, 49 at the top, 49 at the bottom, cut it. So there we have it, we have our template for the main piece of our bag. What I like to do at this stage is label it. So I'm going to call this product the Outdoor Tote. And you also want to write down the measurements of this rectangle. You also want to describe what the template is for. So this is for the main panels. And I'll also need 2 of them. So I just write ×2. Okay, I think that's a pretty good example of how to get a perfectly square edged piece for your template. Now what you need to do is create a template for every single panel on your panel key. Okay, once you've got all your templates cut out, the next step you want to do is actually cut your fabric. My main panel is going to be made out of this Cordura. It's very similar to the canvas that I use, except for it's got this plastic coating on the back which improves its water resistance. Because I need 2 pieces of fabric this size for the main panel of the bag, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this piece of fabric in half, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces of fabric with 1 cut. Now be warned, you can waste a lot of material using this method if you're not careful, but I find it a lot easier and it saves a lot of time. Okay, so make sure we're on the mat and you want to get as close to that top fold as you can. There is a self edge on this piece of fabric here, so I want to avoid all of these stitch holes that you usually get when you order some fabric. So I'm going to place my template here. Trade secret for when you're cutting out your panels for your bag or whatever it might be that you're making. I like to use a weight such as this. This is just a big piece of metal that fell off of an arbor press that I own. But you can use anything that's flat and has got a bit of weight to it. The next tool that I use to cut out material is a rotary cutter. I have this Olfa 45mm rotary cutter. Again, you can buy these from most hobby or DIY shops. Never had an issue with them. I change the blade maybe once every 2 or 3 months, so they do last quite a long time. When you change the blade though, be very careful, they are very, very sharp. So before you start cutting your fabric, you want to make sure you're as tight to that top line as possible as to not waste as much fabric. You also want to make sure that your cutting mat is underneath every line that you'll cut. Okay, what I like to do is just line up the ruler with the edge of the template paper. Takes a little bit of wiggling backwards and forwards. Once you've got it, firm pressure and roll the rotary cutter all the way up. There we go. And you just repeat the process for all 4 sides of the template. Okay, I'm already getting quite excited because this Cordura is a lot tougher than the canvas that I'm used to. So it's taking a couple of passes with the rotary cutter to actually cut through. Not to worry, just keep the ruler straight and keep working that until you feel that it cuts through the fabric and through to the cutting mat underneath. Okay, last edge to cut, line it up with the edges of the template. See there, I've had to do a few passes to cut through. Okay, and once you've done that, you can pull all the fabric away. So you should be left with 2 identical pieces of fabric, which you can then use to make your bag from. So that's it for this week's episode. We've taken our product design and we've turned it into a paper template that we can then reuse, and I've also shown you how to properly and effectively cut out your fabric. Join me next time when I will show you how I set up my sewing machine and some helpful tips and tricks that I use when making my bags. Remember, live deliberately.